The sound is not a scream. It is a wet, rhythmic thud against the nursery floor, echoing through the silence of 3 a.m. Blythe stands in the doorway, her breath hitching as she watches the silhouette of her daughter, Violet, standing over the remains of a broken porcelain lamp. The room is bathed in the cold, blue spill of moonlight from the garden window. Violet does not turn. She does not flinch. She simply stands, her posture rigid, her small hands hidden behind her back with a precision that defies her age. Blythe's own heart hammers against her ribs, a frantic, uneven percussion. She has spent years trying to reach the girl, trying to bridge the distance between them, but tonight, the distance feels like a chasm. There is a specific, calculated stillness in the air, the kind that doesn't belong in a child's bedroom. Welcome to Swasti Diaries. We explore the shadows that linger long after the lights go out. Tonight, we enter a home where love has been repurposed, where a mother's deepest fear is not that her child is wicked, but that she is being sculpted into something entirely different. Look closer at the shards on the rug. They aren't scattered by an accident. They are arranged in a perfect, concentric circle. Violet begins to hum, a soft, monotonous melody that matches the rhythm of the dripping water from the garden gate outside. The gate that Fox insisted was locked. The gate that has now been opened from the inside. My mother never touched me. Not when I cried, not when I fell, not even when the world felt like it was tilting off its axis. I grew up in a house of sterile surfaces and measured silences, terrified that I was a mirror of her coldness. Now, in the dead of night, I see that same void reflected in Violet's eyes. But she is only 7. She shouldn't have the capacity for this kind of calculated malice, this arrangement of broken glass that feels less like a tantrum and more like a warning. I turn, my feet bare on the cold floorboards, and find Fox standing in the shadows of the hallway. He doesn't look at the lamp. He doesn't look at the shattered porcelain or the open gate. He looks only at me, his expression a masterpiece of weary concern. He speaks in that low, steady cadence that usually grounds me, telling me I am tired, that the postpartum shadows are playing tricks on my mind, that I am projecting my own insecurities onto a child who is merely sleeping through the chaos. He is the architect of our domestic peace, the man who locks the world out to keep us safe. But as he reaches out to guide me back to our bedroom, I notice the faint, dark smudge of garden soil on his cuff, the same soil that should be trapped behind a locked gate. The gate he claimed was secure. The gate he swore he hadn't touched since sunset. I step past Fox, the damp chill of the garden pressing against my skin like a physical weight. The gate is latched, yet the soil beneath it is churned, fresh, and unmistakably disturbed. My flashlight beam cuts through the gloom, settling on a patch of trampled hydrangeas near the stone path. There, tangled in the thorns, lies the neighbor's terrier. It is motionless, its fur matted with the same dark, wet earth that stains Fox's cuff. My breath hitches. The animal didn't climb the fence. It was deposited here, a grotesque offering placed with surgical precision. I turn to see Violet standing 10 feet away, her nightgown ghostly in the moonlight. She isn't crying. She isn't even trembling. She simply stands, her posture unnervingly rigid, staring at the lifeless bundle with a hollow, blank expression that chills me to the bone. She looks like a doll posed by a master puppeteer, her stillness a jarring contrast to the violence of the scene. I call her name, but she doesn't flinch. She doesn't acknowledge the scent of death or the frantic rhythm of my heart. Instead, she slowly lifts a small, clean hand and points toward the shed, her finger steady as a compass needle. The shed door is slightly ajar, a sliver of darkness in the moonlight. I realize then that the dog is merely the beginning of this sequence. The contradiction hits me with the force of a blow. How could a 7-year-old move a heavy animal without leaving a single drag mark on the dew-slicked grass? The ground is undisturbed, save for the immediate circle around the body, as if the creature had been dropped from the sky. If the gate remained locked from the inside, the terrier could not have been dropped over the threshold. I move toward the shed, my flashlight beam trembling against the rusted padlock. It is secure, untouched for weeks, evidenced by the thick layer of undisturbed dust coating the hasp. the impossibility of the scene begins to sharpen. If no one entered or exited through the gate, the violence occurred entirely within the perimeter of this backyard. I retreat to the house, my footsteps echoing against the damp patio stones, and slip into Violet's room. The space is unnervingly tidy, yet a loose floorboard beneath her bed catches the light. Pry it open. Inside, I find a collection of incongruous items: a set of silver keys, a broken fragment of a ceramic bowl, and a single blood-stained ribbon. These are not toys. They are trophies. The pattern is too deliberate, too clinical for a child. Violet is not merely playing. She is curating a history of events she has been instructed to observe. I touch the ribbon, the fabric cold and damp, and realize with a sickening jolt that these items correspond to the minor accidents Fox has dismissed over the last month. The broken bowl from our dinner, the lost keys from his study, each piece is accounted for, gathered, and hidden here. The air in the room feels thin, suffocating, as if the walls themselves are closing in to protect a secret design. I am not looking at a child's hoard. I am looking at a ledger of domestic sabotage. If she is the instrument, then Fox is the architect, and I have been living inside his experiment without ever suspecting the walls were glass. How could the gate be locked from the inside if the dog was found outside? The question is a jagged edge in my mind, but the answer is worse. I find the laptop in Fox's study, the screen glowing with a soft, predatory blue in the dark. It is not a work project. It is a folder titled Blythe Reactions. I click on the most recent file. The footage is from inside our living room 2 nights ago. I see myself, my face pale and strained, arguing with a silent, statue-still Violet. But the audio, it is distorted, edited, spliced to make my voice sound shrill and unhinged. I am not the mother protecting her child. I am the villain in his curated narrative. He has been training her to provoke these outbursts, capturing the exact moment I break, and then archiving the evidence for a therapist he hasn't even told me he is consulting. The realization hits with the force of a physical blow. The attic journal, the broken bowl, the blood-stained ribbon. They are not just trophies of a game. They are carefully staged props in a psychological dossier designed to prove my instability. I look at the screen and see my own reflection ghosting over the pixels. I am not living in a home. I am trapped in a laboratory, and the architect is sitting right behind me, his shadow stretching across the floorboards as the study door creaks open. Fox doesn't flinch. He stands in the doorway, a silhouette framed by the hallway light, his expression unreadable, a mask of practiced concern. I don't look away from the screen. The folder holds more than just edited clips. There are digital scans of letters, correspondence between Fox and a clinic in the city, dated years before Violet was born. He wasn't just studying her. He was studying the lineage of detachment. I recall my mother's voice, cold and clinical, warning me that some people are born without the capacity for empathy. Fox clearly took that as a challenge rather than a tragedy. The attic journal I found earlier isn't a diary. It is a ledger of conditioning, detailing exactly how to trigger a child's fear response to make the mother appear unstable. He is mapping my psychological breaking point with the precision of an engineer. I glance at the desk, noting the way his hand, steady surgical, rests against the doorframe. He isn't surprised I found the laptop. He is waiting for my reaction, timing it, logging the data. The realization is a cold, sharp blade. He didn't marry me because he loved me. He married me because I possessed the exact history of trauma he needed to manufacture a perfect subject for his experiments. My daughter isn't a monster. She is a mirror, polished by her father to reflect my own worst fears back at me. I need to know how deep this goes, but as I reach for the mouse to close the file, the screen flickers, a forced override, and the cursor begins to move on its own, deleting the evidence of his design. The screen goes black, leaving me staring at my own reflection in the glass. Fox isn't just deleting files. He is scrubbing the history of our lives. But he made a mistake. A single critical oversight in his digital architecture. I pull up the hospital logs from last week's playdate. The one where Violet supposedly pushed little Leo from the climbing frame. The timestamp on the emergency room admission is 8:14 p.m. That is impossible. I was there, sitting on the bench, watching the sunset bleed into twilight. It was barely 5 o'clock when the incident occurred. 3 hours of unaccounted time. Fox didn't just edit the footage. He altered the medical records to create an alibi for her. And by extension, a timeline where I was the one who was negligent. My pulse thrums against my throat. He isn't protecting Violet from the truth. He is insulating her from consequence to ensure she remains the perfect, isolated subject for his experiment. If the records are falsified, then the internal police report is also a fabrication. I shift my gaze to the desk, seeing the stack of papers I thought were mundane household expenses. They are not receipts. They are invoices for private surveillance equipment, dated months before we moved into this house. He has been watching me from the shadows long before I ever suspected a thing. The silence in the study is broken by the faint, rhythmic click of a deadbolt sliding into place somewhere down the hall. I am not just investigating my daughter anymore. I am trapped in a cage designed by my own husband, and he has just realized that I know the lock is broken. The deadbolt clicks, a mechanical finality echoing through the hall. Fox is home. I retreat into the shadows of the study, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I didn't just find a mistake in the medical logs. I found the missing piece of a jagged puzzle. Tucked behind the invoices was a veterinary report for the neighbor's dog, dated 3 days before the animal disappeared. It's marked with Fox's initials in the margin. A clear, cold instruction on how to sedate a canine without leaving trace elements. He didn't just observe the neighborhood chaos, he cultivated it. The dog didn't run away, and Violet didn't accidentally hurt it. It was a rehearsal, a dry run for the larger, more devastating experiment he is conducting on me. He is pruning my reality, removing every source of comfort or stability, until I am left with nothing but his curated narrative. I hear his footsteps now, measured and rhythmic, coming toward the door. He thinks I am still the woman who doubts her own memory, the wife who fears her own daughter's capacity for cruelty. He has no idea that I am no longer looking at the world through his lens. I am looking at the architect. The handle turns, the metal groaning under his steady pressure. I have seconds to hide the papers, to mask the fact that the cage door is already unlatched. If I fail, I become the next variable in his equation. If I succeed, I become the first person to ever survive his design. The floorboards groan under his weight, but I am already sliding the heavy oak drawer shut. My breath hitches. I have the ledger. It isn't just a record of expenses. It is a map of a man's desperate vanity. Fox has been funneling our family savings into private consulting firms that specialize in child behavioral modification and psychological conditioning. The numbers are staggering. He isn't saving for our future. He is financing a prototype. The realization hits me with the force of a physical blow. Violet isn't his daughter in his eyes. She is an asset, a high-value piece of hardware he is calibrating to ensure my total dependence. He has been starving her of affection and replacing it with rigid, reward-based triggers, all so he can study my reaction to her decline. Every time she acts out, every time she displays that cold, calculated cruelty, she is simply performing a script he wrote in the margins of these invoices. He needs me broken, isolated, and questioning my own sanity because a wife who doubts herself is a wife who never looks at the bank statements. I hear the study door handle jiggle, then lock. He's outside, waiting for me to open it, waiting to see if I'm still the obedient subject. I look down at the ledger one last time. There is a receipt tucked into the back, dated for tonight, for a private security firm. He isn't just monitoring my thoughts anymore. He is planning to contain them. If I walk out that door, I am walking into the final phase of his design. But if I stay here, I am already dead. I press the power button on the digital recorder hidden in the study's bookshelf. My hands are shaking. I have the evidence. I have the proof of Fox's conditioning sessions, the audio logs where he instructs Violet to mimic distress to force my compliance. I can hear the hum of the device as it initializes, the progress bar crawling across the screen like a slow-moving poison. This is it. The moment the file finishes loading, I will have the leverage to walk out of this house and never look back. My heart hammers against my ribs, a frantic rhythm in the absolute silence of the room. I stare at the screen, waiting for the waveform to appear, for the voice of my husband to confirm the architecture of my nightmare. But the screen flickers. A sharp, jagged line cuts across the display, followed by a series of corrupted, unreadable characters. The file is empty. I try to reload to bypass the error, but the data is gone, wiped clean by a remote command I didn't even know was possible. I realize then that the computer has been synced to his workstation all along. He didn't just know I was looking. He allowed me to find the hollow shell of a truth he had already dismantled. I am not the detective in this story. I am the specimen. And the most terrifying discovery isn't that he has been watching me. It's that he has been waiting for me to reach this exact point of desperation to start the final irreversible phase of his design. The screen goes dark, leaving me in a suffocating shroud of pre-dawn stillness. My pulse is a frantic drum in my ears. If he is the architect, then the house is his blueprint. I don't need his digital files. I need the origin. I leave the study, my footsteps silent on the cold floorboards, and head toward the attic. The air grows thinner, smelling of dust and forgotten history. I push past the heavy insulation, my flashlight beam cutting through the gloom until I find it. A small locked cedar chest tucked behind a stack of moth-eaten blankets. Inside, wrapped in yellowing silk, is a journal. It is not Fox's handwriting. It is his mother's. The pages are dense with clinical observations, chilling in their precision. I scan the ink. The same terminology Fox uses to describe Violet's training is here verbatim. Negative reinforcement as a tool for cognitive alignment, she wrote. The child must believe the fear is a consequence of their own agency. My hands tremble as I turn the page, revealing a diagram of a room, our nursery. It maps every sensory trigger he has installed, every hidden speaker, every light-dimming sequence. He isn't just raising a daughter. He is perfecting a cycle of abuse that spans generations. The realization settles in my gut like lead. He didn't invent this cruelty. He inherited it, refined it, and applied it to me like a laboratory subject. I hear a floorboard creak downstairs, a deliberate rhythmic sound. He is awake. He knows exactly where I am, and he knows that I have finally opened the vault. The game has shifted from manipulation to confrontation, and I have nowhere left to run. I hold the journal under the weak spill of my flashlight, the ink dancing like spiders across the page. Fox didn't just train Violet. He built a cage around her consciousness. Every accident I blamed on her inherent malice. The shattered vase, the ruined garden, the terror of the dog, was a scripted performance. He used the nursery's hidden speaker system to project low-frequency tones that induced anxiety, then rewarded her when she acted out against the objects I cherished most. It was Pavlovian conditioning, refined by his mother's cold, clinical hand. I traced the timeline of the incidents. The dates align perfectly with the nights I expressed a desire to leave this house. He wasn't just raising a child. He was weaponizing her against my own maternal instincts to keep me tethered to him. The realization is a cold, sharp blade. My daughter is not a monster. She is a mirror reflecting the darkness he poured into her. I hear his footsteps on the staircase now, deliberate and measured. A predator who has finally realized his prey has found the exit map. He isn't rushing. He knows the house is his, and he knows I am trapped in the rafters. The creak of the floorboards outside the attic door is rhythmic, a countdown to the moment he reveals his face. I have the evidence of his architecture in my hands, but the cost of this knowledge is the one thing I cannot afford. The realization that my husband is not the man I married, but the architect of my own psychological erosion. The door handle begins to turn, the metal protesting in the silence of the night. The door swings open, but Fox isn't there. Only Violet stands in the threshold, her small frame silhouetted by the hallway light. She doesn't look like a monster. She looks like a ghost in her own home. She holds a small velvet-lined box, the one I thought was lost months ago. Inside, there are no toys, only a collection of mechanical gears and a miniaturized frequency transmitter. She doesn't look at me with malice, but with a hollow, terrifying clarity. She whispers that Daddy told her to play the game until I stopped crying, and that if she did it well enough, he would finally let her sleep without the buzzing in her ears. The realization hits me with the force of a physical blow. The buzzing wasn't a hallucination. It was the frequency he used to calibrate her responses. A sonic tether designed to turn my own daughter into a remote-controlled instrument of my psychological collapse. She wasn't acting out, she was being signaled. Every time she shattered a vase or screamed in the night, she was merely executing a command he sent from his study. The cruelty is staggering. He didn't just break me. He dismantled the innocence of the one person I swore to protect, turning her into a puppet of his own design. I look at her, really look at her, and see the wires behind her eyes. He is coming. I can hear his steady, rhythmic pace on the hardwood, but the game has changed. I have the journal, I have the transmitter, and for the first time I have the truth. Fox stands by the kitchen island, the moonlight catching the silver of a small, clinical scalpel he has retrieved from his study. He doesn't look at me with the warmth of a husband. He looks at me as a variable that has finally reached its limit. The kitchen is silent, save for the hum of the refrigerator that seems to pulse in time with the transmitter still clutched in my hand. He steps forward, his voice a smooth, calculated monotone, explaining that my fragility was always the intended outcome, that I was the anchor holding back his research. He expected me to shatter under the weight of his orchestration. He expected Violet to be the final nail in the coffin of my sanity. He didn't count on the girl listening to the frequency with a different ear. Violet steps from the shadows behind him, her movements eerily precise, mirroring the gait he taught her to maintain during his long nights of observation. She isn't holding a toy. She is holding the heavy, cast-iron handle of the kitchen mixer, her grip steady, her eyes devoid of the terror he spent months cultivating. She doesn't scream. She simply presses a button on the transmitter. The sudden, high-pitched whine of the frequency modulator causes Fox to stumble, his hands flying to his ears as the sonic feedback loop he built to control her turns back on its architect. He is reeling, disoriented by the very weapon he designed to dismantle my mind. The power dynamic has shifted in a heartbeat. I watch him collapse against the granite, not with pity, but with the cold, crystalline clarity of a survivor. The monster isn't the child. The monster is the man currently gasping on the floor, realizing that his own creation has finally learned how to bite. The silence that follows is not a void. It is the sound of a carefully constructed reality collapsing under its own weight. Fox lies amidst the wreckage of his own design, his breath hitching in a rhythm he can no longer dictate. Violet stands by the window, her silhouette framed against the dying moonlight, watching the world with eyes that have seen the machinery behind the curtain. She is not a monster, nor is she a child playing a game. She is a survivor, forged in the fires of an experiment that intended to break her spirit, but instead hardened it into something unbreakable. I look at the transmitter in my palm, a piece of plastic and wire that once held the power to shatter my sanity. Now it is merely detritus. The investigation will find what they expect to find. A tragic domestic collapse, a man undone by his own ambition, and a child caught in the crossfire. They will never understand the architecture of the cage he built, or the precise moment the prisoner turned the key. I have walked through the fire, and while the burns are permanent, the air on the other side is finally clear. The truth is a lonely burden, but it is mine to carry. Survival is not a singular event. It is a permanent state of vigilance, an endless night where I am the only one awake to guard the exit. Thank you for walking this dark path with me. If you value the truth hidden in the shadows, please subscribe to Swasti Diaries.